Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to you, wherever you are in the world. Hi, my name is Charlene Lee, and today I'm going to be talking about how do you set audacious goals. And what I mean by audacious goals are what are goals that inspire you, that excite you, that when you get up in the morning, you go, wow, I can't wait to get closer to my amazing, huge goal about the things I want to do, create, and change. So, one of the things that I really would love to hear from you today as you're joining here, of course, tell me where you are, where you're coming from today, but also please share with me one of your most audacious goals, your biggest goals, the things that you're so excited about. And I think the reason why I wanted to talk about this is because I think of January as this optimistic, future looking time when the year is unfolding before us. And we're thinking, wow, there's so many things we want to accomplish. If 2021 was anything like way it was for me, it was a lot of change, a lot of things happening, a lot of growth. And I'm looking forward to 2022 having even more of that. So please share what are the things that you're inspired by, the things that you are looking forward to. Because today we're going to talk about how do you actually set goals for yourself as an individual, for yourself as a leader, but especially for your organization. Because you know how we talk about you are what you measure. Well, what you measure is what is based on your goals. So if your goals are set really, really high, then you're going to try to achieve these really big goals and measure yourself against those types of goals. But instead, we are setting goals that we know we can hit, that we know are achievable, that we feel comfortable with. Then we're going to act in a very, very different way. So today I want to talk about what does it mean to have these big, hairy, audacious goals. That's something that Jim Collins wrote in his book Built to Last. Classic book. These BHAGs, as he called them, are set far in the future, typically 5, 10 years out. And they're meant to inspire, to excite a team to be in a place where they aren't today. I'll give you an example. I was speaking with one company, and in their industry, they were a distant, far behind player. They were a startup, and their BHAG, the big, hairy, audacious goal, was to be number one in their industry. And they're looking at each other, go, can we do that? Can we actually be number one in this industry? It's dominated by these huge incumbent players who have been in the business for decades. And they said, yeah, I think we have a chance of making this happen. We can be number one. And they talked about what that would look like, what it would take to get there. And they strove and worked so hard against that. And then one day they were there. They were actually number one. They were getting closer and closer. And then one day they were number one in terms of market share, revenues, everything. And so that was absolutely fantastic for them. But then they realized something. Once they had achieved their goal, now what was their goal going to be? What was their next BHAG going to be? And that's when I came to meet them because they had crafted their entire identity, everything about their organization as this challenger brand, as this company that was the underdog. And then when they were the overdog, when they were the dominant player, well, then what are we here for? And the air had gone out of the organization, so they needed new ambitions. And this is where I think establishing a clear BHAG, but also having a plan to say, well, what do you do when you start getting close to achieving that? How do you set a new BHAG that isn't necessarily based on the competition, isn't defined by the people around you, but defined by the things that are really impactful? For example, serving your customers, changing something. One of my favorite BHAGs is from a company called Virta, VIRTA. It's a company that a friend of mine started. And full disclosure, I made a very small investment in the company. And Virta's BHAG is to reverse type 2 diabetes. Very clear, very measurable. And it is so far off in the future that this is something that they can keep working on and excites the team every single day they come in. So think about what these big, ambitious goals you might have, things that lay out in the future. I want to give you one other example for you. And I was working with a university and I was speaking to their development officer. And he was telling me about their new 5-year endowment plan that they were going to raise. And he was explaining, we're going to raise $2 billion over the next 5 years to really create this firm foundation for the university's future. And one of the things I asked him was, well, you did this 5 years ago. Well, what was your goal then? And he said, well, it was 1.5 billion and we achieved it. It was fantastic. And now we set the goal even higher. We're going to go for 2 billion. And my question to him was, do you think you can make it? He goes, oh yeah, we're going to get there. I go, you're pretty confident of that, right? Yeah, absolutely. I go, so my question to him was, why isn't the goal 3 billion? Why didn't you set it for 2 billion? What would you do differently if the goal was 3 billion instead of 2 billion? And he immediately responded, he goes, oh, we thought about that. We would do things completely differently. We would have different staff, we have different approaches, the campaigns, but we didn't think we would get there. We felt that we could get to like 2.7, but not 3. So we took it back down to 2 billion because we knew we could achieve that. And I'm like, but isn't 2.7 better than 2? Isn't that a better place to be? You'd be better off getting 2.7 and not hit your goal, but you'd be so much better off. And he thought about that, and it came down to, how do we think about goals? Do we think about goals as something we can achieve? Or do we think about goals as something that inspires us to rise to our better selves, to do things better, to be more ambitious, to achieve more? And so this is what I really want you to think about right now. Look at your goals for the year and say, are you setting goals that you think you can hit over the next quarter, over the next 6 months, 12 months, even 18 months? Or are you setting goals that you go, man, if I just get even close to that goal, I'm going to be so much better off than if I try to achieve something that we're going to know that we're going to hit. So this development officer at the university went away, thought about it some more, talked to his team. And a few weeks later, he came back and called me. He said, you know, we just increased our goal to 3 billion. It's crazy. I know it's crazy, but we just set, even if we get closer to that, it'll be so much better. And they started changing the way that they were operating. They started making different decisions, making different investments in order to get closer to that $3 billion goal, that dollar goal. Now, just a quick update. I talked to this person about 3-4 years ago, and I checked in recently and said, how are you doing on this? And he goes, well, actually, we think we have a shot at this. It's still really tenuous, but we think we actually have a shot at hitting that new goal, that $3 billion goal, because we're doing things so differently. But even if we don't, we're just excited and thrilled to be working in this way rather than the old way. So I want to say, I just want to share out here that a couple of people share their audacious goals. So we have Robert saying he's going to open multiple all-in-one restaurants, and Jan also shared that it's basically wants to be audacious, and he's joining from the Lake District in the UK. I'm sorry, Jan, I'm not sure if you're a man or woman, but thank you for joining from the UK. And Pedro is also joining from Portugal. So please, if you are listening, please share what your audacious goals are. And if you want, just share, what is so inspirational about those goals too. So I want to talk very specifically about 2 types of goals that can help you get to this point. You may be familiar with SMART goals, SMART, and they stand for being specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. I find for myself, I have to write these things down because I always miss one of them. I can't remember all of them at the same time. And funnily, it's always a different one that I can't remember. So specific goals are, again, very clear. The SMART goals are very clear. And I love this acronym because it makes me take a look at my goal, go through the checklist, and make sure that my goals are robust and full. And the types of goals that I would encourage you to have are something called objectives and key results. The reasons why I love these things, the shorthand is OKRs, objectives and key results. I love this because John Doerr laid it out in his book, Measure What Matters. The beautiful thing about OKRs is they truly take these BHAGs, these big, hairy, audacious goals that you have, and break it down into smaller units. There is a hierarchy to OKRs. You may have a goal for the 5 to 10 year vision, a 1 year plan, a group plan, and also individual goals. And some very specific things about them that are, first of all, the objectives. The objectives are very clear. There are only a certain number of them, no more than like 3 or 5. So they're very focused. And also, they're very inspirational. And if they're designed the right way, they make you uncomfortable. And so the goal is the idea is to set these objectives so that hitting 70% of the objective is a huge win. That's considered high performance. You did great. And the reason why I love OKRs for these objectives in particular is that if you close the gap between that 70 and 100%, that's the stretch goal. And you can see how we wanted to shoot for that 100%, and if it's 70, we're great. Now, when I talk to people about setting objectives, setting goals that you're not going to achieve, that just doesn't feel right. Because we've been trained our entire lives to achieve 100%, to get to the finish, to get that A and A plus. And if you fall short of that, then that's not the place you want to be. So it's really hard then to set goals that you know you're not going to achieve. But you're going to do your best and you do your darndest to try to achieve them. Imagine that you're working on a sales team, and this is really where it becomes a significant issue. Sales teams want to hit their goals, they want to get to 100%, and then they can start getting really lucrative bonuses. But what if it instead said, we're going to shoot for 100%, we hit 70, we're going to be great. How does that change your mindset? How does that change the things that you do every single day? How does that change the way that you lead and manage a team? It changes everything. Because the second part of objectives and key results is the key results. The key results lay out those objectives in very clear terms. How are we going to measure the outcomes, not the activities that you do? We're not going to say that, oh, we helped do something, we participate, or we research, something. We're going to talk about the impact of all of the things that we did. And the reason why I love key results so much is that you're clearly defining it. It's very clear whether you achieved it or you didn't, whether those outcomes were a reality or not. And by setting it to be 70% of achievement, you're actually saying we're going to do these activities in order to achieve 100%, to try to hit 100%. But along the way, we're going to definitely get to 70%, and we're going to try and strive for that 100%. So one of the reasons why people say, no, this doesn't make any sense because I'm compensated on hitting 100% of my goals. And this is the second key thing besides making these goals really inspirational, in some ways unachievable for the quarter, is that objectives and key results really work when you delink and decouple the compensation discussion from the achievement of the outcomes. Because if you try to hit those stretch goals and you're trying to achieve them and you don't hit them, you shouldn't be penalizing people on that. And the best organizations are instead compensating based on effort, the activities that you're doing. So that's how you can measure that. And then from a sales team perspective, that can be really hard because how do you know whether it's actually achieving against a particular goal, revenue goal, because salespeople are very motivated by hitting that goal. Again, having the goals set against clear financial and measurable performance metrics as part of it, but also delinking it so that's not necessarily linked to 100%, that last 100%, but more to that 70% is the key. So the two things I've talked about are the focus and the inspirational aspect of objectives, the measurability of the key results, But I also want to emphasize and take a moment to talk about the third aspect of OKRs that I really love. And there's a principle that these goals and the key results, these objectives and key results, are visible to everybody in the organization. That there's transparency, that I know and you know, everybody knows in the organization what our objectives and key results are, and also whether we achieve them or not. And that can be very daunting because do we really want people to know what our goals are? Do we really want them to know whether we achieve them or not? And in the end, you actually do, because you want people to be aligned, to be clear that we are all working towards the same thing, that our measurements are the things that we define as success are clearly visible to each other so that we know and understand what our motivations are, where our focus is, what our priorities are. And if what happens is if I understand it and you understand it, we can help each other in the areas where there are synergies in our efforts so that we can achieve not only that 70% of the objectives, but go even further. And when I understand what your audacious goals are and you understand mine, then we can be so much more supportive of achieving that goal together. So transparency can in the beginning, when you're setting these kinds of goals, well, do I really want to share what my ambitions are? Do I really want to let people know whether I achieve them or not? Well, in the end, yes, you do. Because otherwise, how can you get the support that a team can provide if you aren't clear about what your goals are going to be together as a team and also as individuals? All right. So let's see. I just have a quick comment here from Lynn. So thank you so much for joining today and adding this comment. So identifying the necessary effort toward a goal defines the true leading indicator of the goal. That's such a good point. The goal is a lagging indicator because the train has already left the station by then. The necessary effort is still in the station. So I think it's great to be able to talk about, again, what that goal is going to be, and then be very clearly defining what that effort is going to achieve. What is that outcome you want to have? So you can see the outcomes of all of that effort. So thank you so much, Lynn, for sharing that. So, one other quick thing about OKRs and setting these goals. One of the things that I really encourage you to do is to start doing this, to start writing objectives that are audacious, that are inspirational, that will help you achieve a higher level of performance. Because when you shift that mindset from achieving what is possible to achieving what you want to get to this a huge change in the world, to have the outcomes you really want to see in the world, it changes how you behave. It changes the ways that the decisions that you make every day. And one of the hardest parts I find is that people have way too many objectives. They have way too many goals. And the reason why I think the focus of OKRs, of having one huge BHAG, of having some very specific goals about how you're going to get to that audacious outcome in the end, is that when you only have 3 to 5, then you can focus all your efforts on just those things. Because, excuse me, I'm just getting a drink of water here. Thanks for that. Because if you have too many objectives, you spread yourself too thin, and then nothing sticks. And the discipline of having fewer goals, of having that focus, injects what I call useful realism into your BHAG huge audacious goal. The BHAG is out there. I want to change the world. I have this big audacious mission and purpose. And your OKRs are, what am I going to do this year? What am I going to do this quarter to achieve that? And in order to achieve that, I have to figure out what are the most important things that we have to accomplish in order to achieve the goal. Not everything. This is not your to-do list. Your goals and your objectives are very specific to the most important things you have to get right in order to achieve that BHAG in the long term. What do we have to accomplish this quarter? And be super focused on that. Because if we do not achieve these 3 things, if these few things are not done, then we will not get to where we want to be. Having that focus, having that singular, clear idea of how do we define a success is essential, because this is what leaders do. We make it very clear what that goal has to be, how we're going to achieve that goal, and we make sure that everyone is aligned so that we can be marching together towards that. That there aren't questions. Well, what are we doing? How are we going to get there? We're absolutely clear. We're spending no effort and no time on trying to clarify things while we're on that journey. So I encourage you to think and look at your goals for 2022. Narrow them down. Really pick just a few that really are going to make a difference for you. I encourage you to write them down. Check in on them on a regular basis, every quarter, every month, each week, every day. And say, what am I going to do today to achieve this audacious goal? Am I on track to be able to do that? And you can only do that if you have a small number of goals to make sure you're achieving them. I love 3 because I can remember 3. I always forget one when it's 5. So 3 goals are absolutely crucial to be very clear. What if you look back on 2022, when you look back on December 31st, 2022, look back and say, man, it was a great year because I achieved these 3 things. I got so much further than I ever thought. Nothing else matters, 'cause these 3 things were a huge success, and my year has been so worth it, and it's been a great year because of that. I think if you could say that for yourself, for your team, for your organization, then that would be a huge benefit to be able to focus on those audacious goals. So that's what I have for today. What I wanted to do is also just share with you, just continue this idea of achievement and goal settings for January, is that next week on Tuesday, again, Tuesdays at 9 o'clock Pacific and 12 o'clock Eastern, I'll be talking about how you can deliver your best work. And what I mean by best isn't necessarily perfect. I want to talk about the distinction between perfection and excellence, in that what we should be striving for every single day is for excellence, to do our best, produce the best, put our best effort in, as Lynn was saying, and produce the best effort that you can get out. That is very different from perfection. And I want to talk about that because so many leaders and organizations are being held back, I believe, by this need to be perfect. So join me next week so that we can talk about how do we change our frame of thinking from trying to be perfect to pursuing excellence. Thank you so much. And let's see, I just have a couple, I have a couple of last comments here. It just came in at the end of the close here. So I have Oswan Jefferson said, my ambitious goal is to have 4 new growth partners, finish my book, and earn my coaching certification. 3 ambitious goals. Fantastic, Oswan. Thank you so much for sharing that. I wish you all the best in achieving it. And I encourage you also that if you have any questions, please send them to me. I would love to respond to them on air, talk about them. And I think it's a great way to encourage, again, you to get more clarity on these things, because it's hard with the live stream. And I know many of you are not listening to this live. So I encourage you to write to me in the comments in this stream, or directly to me, DM me through whatever social platform you're on, or email me at charlene@charlenelee.com and send me your questions, and I'll do my best to answer them on air. All right. Thank you so much, everyone. I really appreciate you joining. Have a great week. Set those audacious goals, and please share them back with me, what you are trying to achieve for 2022. Thanks, and have a great week.